Hello everybody and welcome back to the Rusty Maths channel. Now in this video you will come to see how to solve a quadratic by completing the square. If you haven't realized, this is a 4-part series and you are here to watch part number 3. In part 1 we solved quadratics by factorization. In part 2 we solved quadratics by using graphs, and for the sake of this 4-part series I am using the same questions so that if you watch the other parts, you can see that the answers are all the same. Without any further ado, let's go and complete the square. Okay, so here are the 2 questions that we worked on in video number 1. So let's jump into the first one. I am going to go and complete the square. I will assume that you know how to complete the square. If you don't, I have left a handy link in the description down below, and in the description I've also got links to the other videos in this series. Anyway, let's go. So the first thing we do before we complete the square is we check to see that the coefficient of x squared is 1. In this case it is 1, and if it's 1 we can go ahead and complete the square. What we need is half the coefficient of x squared, and then we need to subtract it back out from the 4. I'll use different colors to show you what I mean. So we're going to start with the x squared, add 3x, and we're going to then add in half of 3, which is going to be, let me just make sure you change color, which is 3/2. I tend to keep this as fractions because it's really important, easier to work with than faffing about with decimals. Okay, so anyway, so x squared add 3x, I have now added something new to the equation, which is half of the coefficient of x. I'm going to carry on now, subtract 4, and the thing that I've added in, I now have to subtract it back out. So that's 3/2. I'll close that bracket and I'm going to square it. Now it's important that you understand that even though I've made a slight alteration to my equation, I really haven't. Or have I? Because have a look at this, right? I have added something new and then I promptly subtracted it back out. So really, if I was solving this, that will subtract that and then it will leave me back with what I started with. A conversation for another day, I would say. So therefore we finish off completing the square by saying x add 3/2 all square. So you can see here that I've taken the x square from the x from here and the 3/2 all square, and I've put them in brackets because it makes a perfect square. Now I gotta work this stuff out on the end, so let's jump straight into it. Let's go and get our hands dirty and do the gritty work. Okay, so that's going to be subtract 4 take away 9/4 is equal to 0. Now for the sake of not crashing into the question I've got below, let's work this out on the side. So what I've got now is -4 take away 9/4. We all know how to work with fractions, but what I'm going to do is a bit of a tricky quick one on this one here, and here's what it's going to be. 9/4 is 2¼ Yes it is, because there are 2 4s that makes 8, and then you got 1 left over, that's 2¼ If I now take 2¼ and I add 4 to that, it becomes 6¼ So this is -6¼ And just for the sake of making sure things look a little bit nicer, I'm going to turn it back into a mixed number, and that becomes -25/4. Now if I've lost you there, check in the description below. I've left a video on all about adding and subtracting fractions and mixed numbers that I've got on the channel. But 6 times 4 is 24, plus 1 makes 25. That's 25/4. I'm now going to take that and put it in here. So now what I've got is x add 3/2 all square take away 25/4 is equal to 0. Well, the problem I was trying to avoid is now happening whether I like it or not. So let's move this down a little bit out the way. All right, let's go. So now I'm going to solve it. And the first thing I'm going to do is add 25 over 4 because I need to bring this to the other side. I'm going to skip all the lovely fancy things because the video will get too long. So now I'm going to have x add 3 over 2, close brackets, square that, is equal to 25 over 4. I now need to get rid of the square. And the opposite of squaring something is to find the square root of it. So let's go and do that. Now this is going to be x add 3 over 2 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 25 over 4. Now, why did I use the plus or minus? It's because square root always has a plus or minus. And that's because square numbers, if it has negative square factors and you multiply them, it still gives you a positive number. So square root is always to plus or minus, okay? Now, the other reason why we need to use both the plus and minus is because this is a quadratic. And so we're expecting to get 2 roots. We're expecting 2 answers. Let's go and finish this off now. So now I need to bring this negative 3 over 2 to that side. So therefore x is equal to negative 3 over 2 plus or minus root. Actually, let's work that root out now because square root of 25 over 4 means the square root of 25, which is 5, and the square root of 4, which is 2. So this becomes 5 over 2. Sweet. These are the most perfect fractions to work out. Why? Because they've got the same denominator. So life is good. So I'm going to take this and bring it down a little bit again out the way because it keeps getting in the way. And let's go and finish this off now. So what we're actually working out is, let's separate it. We're actually working out minus 3 over 2 add 5 over 2. Or we're working out minus 3 over 2 take away 5 over 2. That's what the plus or minus means. It means you have to work out one with a plus and then work out one with a minus. Well, the denominators are the same, so therefore 5 take away 3 is 2 divided by 2, which is equal to 1. And on the other one, you have to add those two together. So this becomes negative 8 over 2, which is equal to 4. So if you've watched my other videos, you will realize that these are the same 2 answers we got for that question. And therein ends how we solve a quadratic by completing the square. Now, why did I do 2 questions? Well, on the second question, it's a slightly more challenging question, and I think I might be helping someone who really needs to see how to complete the square on a question like this and see if we get the same answers as we have done in video number 1. So let's go straight into it. Obviously, if you finish here, then you can jump off the video if you like, if you don't really need this. This topic is for higher tier students anyway. Okay, let's go. So I start by checking to see that the coefficient of x squared is 1. And in this case, it is not 1, it's actually 3. So I need to factorize that out. So let's go and factorize that now. So we bring the 3 outside, put some big square brackets in there. And so this becomes 17 over 3x, add 10 over 3. And that's equal to 0. And you might say, well, why did we end up with this? Well, that's because usually when we factorize, we look for common factors, don't we? We look for factors of that number. But unfortunately, by bringing the 3 out, 3 is not a factor of 17 and it's not a factor of 10. So if I multiply the 3 by this, the 3's will cancel out, leaving me with the 17. And the 3's will cancel out with the 10, leaving me with that 10 alone. So that's a new little trick that you can learn. Anyway, now that my coefficient of x is 1, I can now go ahead and complete the square inside of the big square brackets. So let's go. So the 3 is still outside there. X squared, take away 17 over 3x, add. Now I need to add something new in the equation, which is minus 17 over 6 all square. But you might say, where did I get that from? Let's do some work on the side. If I need to find half of this coefficient, it means multiply it by a half. So if I take my 17 over 3 and I multiply that by a half, it becomes 17 over 6. So that's half of it there. Anyway, let's carry on. So this becomes add 10 over 3, and now I need to subtract back out that new thing I have just added in there, 17 over 6 square. Finish my big square brackets, equals 0, and then we go from there. Now this is going to get a bit messy in a minute, so bear in mind, check your fraction knowledge is okay. I will use my calculator to get the answers quicker so that you can see what's actually happening here. Anyway, let's complete the square inside of the big brackets. So we've got 3 big brackets open and then little brackets, x take away 17 over 6 all square minus 169 over 36. Anyway, so now what we need to do is get rid of the things that we don't need. Now, usually at this point, if I was just completing the square, I would multiply out by this 3. But because I'm solving an equation, I'm going to get rid of it now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide by 3 to lose this 3, and then it will open up the big brackets. So once I divide by 3, that 3 will cancel out, leaving me with x minus 17 over 6 all square is equal to 169 over 36. Notice that I took the opportunity to bring that over straight away. I'm trying to cut the video down so you can bring that over. Now, the next job is get rid of the square. Remember, it's plus or minus square root. So x minus 17 over 6 is equal to the plus or minus root of 169 over 36, like so. And then we need to now get rid of the 17 over 6. It needs to be added on. So now this becomes x is equal to 17 over 6 plus, well, let's work this out. Square root of 169 is 13. Square root of 36 is 6. So that's going to be 13 over 6. Or x will equal to 17 over 6 take away 13 over 6 because of the plus and the minus. And so we finish off this question here now by just saying that x is equal to, well, 17 add 13 is 30. So that's 30 over 6 like so, which is 5. And so we see that that equals to 5. And then this one here is going to be equal to, well, when we work this out, 17 take away 13 is going to be 4. So that's 4 over 6, which when simplified gives us 2/3. Now, if you've watched video number 1, you'll realize that those are the very same answers we've got. All right, and that brings us to the end of this video. Did you enjoy it? Did you learn something new? If you did, smash that like button. Don't forget to subscribe below and ring that notification bell so you don't miss another upload. Stay tuned though. Video number 4 on the quadratic formula is coming up soon. I'll see you on video number 4.